Afternoon and morning, all you beautiful people, depending on where you are. It is 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:04 p.m. Eastern Time on the East Coast over here in the Eastern Time Zone, but wherever you are around the country, around the world. Hello. The Week 6 AP poll is here for college basketball. This is honestly the biggest AP poll of the season, right? Like the AP poll has its kind of you give and take, the grain of salt, a lot of different rankings because of some of the voters and whatever, but the Week 6 AP poll is a historical projector of a national champion in March, which is absolutely crazy. We're going to get into everything 1 through 25. We'll get into some of the teams that are just outside the top 25, just like every single week, like every Monday. Don't forget, stay active in the chat, ask your questions, look out for polls also. We will get to everything possible, and I will talk about everything that you guys want to talk about. The historical proof I do want to mention every single national champion since 2004. So that's over 20 years. I think it's 20 or 21 because of the COVID year. Over 20 years of national champions have all been top 12 in the Week 6 AP poll. I know it sounds stupid. I know it sounds really dumb on the surface, but there is validity to it because this is the point in the year after all the MTEs and after everybody in the country basically has played some kind of non-conference actually good opponent, right? Like majority of the teams in the country have played good opponents, and the teams that haven't, that are still undefeated, like your Vanderbilts, like your Oklahoma States and Nebraska, they're not in that top 12 yet because they haven't played those great teams. So all the teams in the top 12, you got Arizona, Michigan, Duke, Iowa State, UConn, Purdue, Houston, Gonzaga, Michigan State, BYU, Louisville, and Alabama. History tells us that one of those teams is going to win the national championship in March. I am curious to see in the chat who you guys think that team is going to be, if it is going to be one of those 12. And I honestly think that those top 12 teams, along with like Illinois, and then there's a kind of a cusp, like the Carolina at 14 to like Kansas at 19 is kind of a tough group where like they're the top teams in the country are starting to separate from the rest. So it makes sense, the validity to the historical proof of that. Crumpton says that UNC should be at least ranked number 11. I don't agree with that. I don't think UNC should be above teams like Alabama and Illinois. I think Louisville has a case, but no way they should be above Alabama, Illinois, and definitely not BYU and everybody above that. So I personally disagree with that. Although, again, they're outside the top 12. I don't think Carolina is going to end up winning the national championship anyway. But nonetheless, let's start at the top, like always. The top four teams in the country, I actually think they got this perfect. This is crazy. The exact same top four as my top four: Arizona, Michigan, Duke, Iowa State. It's really like a 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D type of situation right now, right? They're all undefeated. They all have pretty much equally impressive resumes. Iowa State, obviously, with that crazy win over Purdue this past weekend at Mackey, biggest home loss in Purdue history, biggest away win at a number one team on the road in college basketball history. So my vote would be for Arizona also because they were number two last week. They put up the resume earlier than everybody else, right? With their early season play, they were beating really good teams. They won at UConn also a couple weeks ago. Like they were number two. There's no reason for them to be bumped out of having that chance at number one now that Purdue lost and fell here to six. So Arizona 8-0 right now. They look really good against Auburn on Saturday night. Again, they're definitely a chunk better than Auburn, but they absolutely handled business and made sure that everyone knew that. They get to play against Alabama this weekend. I think it's on Saturday night. They're going to play Alabama, which is going to be absolutely awesome. I believe they're home in that game. Absolutely love that they're playing Bama. Actually, I don't know where they're playing that game, but it might be on the road. It might be one of those neutral site games. Love that they're playing Alabama. Going to be an absolute barn burner. Ton of points, ton of offense. Alabama can hang with them, and Alabama can win. Arizona's physicality has been awesome. Again, they deserve to be number one in the country. We talked a lot about Michigan last week after Feast Week. Duke is someone else that I think is good to talk about. But we'll get the comments in a second. I think Duke and Iowa State, I think, very much deserve to be where they are. They have a case to be the number one team in the country. Duke's resume is great. They're not even shooting the ball well. Their point guard play isn't great, but they're beating really good teams. They win dogfight games and they can hang in shootouts. And against really good offensive teams, winning at the Breslin Center with how good Michigan State's been playing is should not be understated and underappreciated at all. And then Iowa State, obviously, at Mackey was incredible. I will see some of the other comments here. Let's see. We got Shiloh says Cal should be somewhere in there instead of UCLA. Cal also, yes, they beat UCLA, but Cal also has lost a couple of really bad games. So again, they're getting votes. They lost that one bad game. I think it was last week, but I I don't know. I don't think that like the head-to-heads are going to start to get thrown out the window in some capacity, right? Because if Cal beats UCLA, but they lost to Kansas State, it was like, should Kansas State be up there? But no, because Kansas State is on a four-game losing streak and lost to Bowling Green and Seton Hall. Like, the head-to-heads are important when teams are very closely ranked, in my opinion. UCLA also hasn't been fully healthy, which again, they haven't been fully healthy, so that's part of their quality. But them at a fully healthy team is definitely a top 25 team. Aaron says, where is Georgia, man? Yeah, Georgia, I'm surprised that they are, what, 26, 27, 28, 29th in the AP poll rating here. I'm definitely surprised they're behind Cal. I think Iowa, Oklahoma State makes sense, and Georgia in that top 30, I think is fair. I have them at like 31 or 32 in my power. I think 31 in my power ranking. So I think it's fair to have them outside the top 25 and one of the highest teams getting votes. I wouldn't be worried too much. They haven't really played great teams yet. Back on the Duke thing, Jot the Goat says that Duke is not at one with the teams they beat is nasty. I don't know if I fully agree with like they haven't beaten good enough teams, right? They beat Texas, which was easy. They aren't great. They beat Kansas pretty handily. Then they beat Arkansas, Florida, and Michigan State in their last three. I don't know how you can look at that and say that they don't have a case at least to be at the top. Again, they haven't beaten Michigan State is a top team. They haven't beaten an Arizona, a Michigan, an Iowa State, a UConn, a Purdue, a Houston, I mean, they beat Michigan State. Like they're in that group of teams, but they haven't beat one of those top teams. So I think that's why they're sitting at number three, and not able to push into that number one conversation. And then Cash Duke says we have the best resume. It's a great resume. I just think that because they were behind those other teams like Arizona and Michigan beforehand, they need to have one of those like substantial wins over a UConn, over a Purdue like Iowa State did, over an Iowa State to be able to push into that number one conversation. And I look at their schedule, they don't play any of them, right? Like they play a great schedule. I'm not trying to knock it at all. They play Lipscomb, Texas Tech, and then into ACC play where the best teams are going to play are Louisville and then North Carolina and Virginia, I guess. But I don't think that it's a worry for Duke. They should be able to win every single game of the year. Oh, they do play Michigan. I've lied. Michigan on February 21st. I forgot about that one. But that'll be an interesting one. But as long as they take care of business in the ACC, I'm sure Duke will get to number one at some point in the year. Let's go on to the rest of the rankings here. I saw Eat Nerds said that Louisville should be top five. Definitely disagree with that because there's no way you can put them over the top 10. I would even still have Alabama over them. You got to remember that Arkansas just beat them. So like to me, Arkansas is proving that they're as good as a team like Louisville. They're both offensive, free-flowing teams, but the talent kind of prevailed for Arkansas in that game and those two in the backcourt guards. Louisville's really good. They look good versus Indiana. They're an awesome team, certified top 15 in the country. I just think when I look at the top 10 there, I see a drop off, but I think Alabama is even in that group and maybe even Illinois when they're at their peak, where Louisville, I have less confidence that they should be in that amongst that top 10 group or breaking into that. But again, those top 10 teams in the country down to BYU have been absolutely unbelievable. So, Burning Octopus also on Louisville said, how does Louisville drop to 11 and Gonzaga moves up? I think the Louisville lost the game to Arkansas. Like it's pretty simple. Louisville lost the game to Arkansas, and Gonzaga manhandled Kentucky. I guess it was this past week. Even though Kentucky hasn't been good, obviously they still won that game by 35. Like that holds some weight in some capacity. And their only loss is that the Players Era Finals lost to Michigan. They look great against Alabama. Like Gonzaga moving up, I'm perfectly fine with, especially with Michigan State losing a game. On to the rest of the rankings. Vanderbilt at 15, we talked about a little bit how they haven't played enough great teams yet. Texas Tech, Arkansas is an interesting one. I believe, do they play each other this week? Am I correct in saying that? Let's find out. Arkansas plays Texas Tech on Saturday. So that'll be an awesome game. Honestly, my favorite game of the entire week, maybe with Iowa State. 16 versus 17. Where are they playing that game? They're playing at a neutral site at the American Airlines Center in Dallas, I believe that is, right? So that means it's going to be basically a Texas Tech semi-home game. It'll be a lot of fun. Arkansas, Texas Tech, a lot of shot makers, a lot of good defenders a lot of talented offensive shot makers on both sides of the ball. But the Texas Tech defense is going to have to step up if they want to win that game. Florida 18 after the loss against Duke. I'm fine with that. I think 18, 19, like into the top 20 is about right for them. I think they definitely haven't hit their stride yet, but I think they haven't been good. Like their turnovers are bad, the guard play has been bad, but they found their rhythm a little bit in the second half at Duke. They fought back, they were resilient. Alex Condon and Thomas Houck were huge for them. If they play more through the front court, let the guards be X factors, I think that'll bode well for them. You saw it on the screen for a second. I do want to bring them up. Nebraska ball, baby. Number 23 in the country right now. They are currently on what is the country's longest winning streak, which dates back to last season. They're 9-0 right now. They are on a 13-game winning streak because at the end of last season, they missed the Big Ten tournament and they ended up, or sorry, they didn't miss the Big Ten tournament. I lied. They played in, was it CBI or NIT? I think they ended up winning, whatever it was. They beat ASU, Georgetown, Boise State, and UCF to end last season. And now they're on a 9-game winning streak to start this year. They look great against Creighton. Creighton's look terrible. They beat Creighton, Kansas State, New Mexico, Oklahoma. Like, you would have expected them to maybe drop one of those games, but Nebraska ball is cooking. They get to play Wisconsin and Illinois this week on Wednesday and Saturday. If they come out undefeated, still 11-0, and beat Wisconsin, and then Illinois on the road, they're going to be people are going to talk about Nebraska in the top 12, top 15 in the country without a doubt, and that will be a big proven moment for them. So that'll be really interesting to watch. Virginia is another team at 24 that I personally love. I've been high on them since before the year. I said that they were a dark horse ACC contender. And I still think they are. They had that loss to Butler, but they look so good against Dayton this past week, and Dayton is a really good team out of the A10, who I think is an A10 contender and one of the best teams in the A10. Love Virginia. I think that's a good fit for them. I think when you look at the rest of the ACC, Duke's been great. And then Carolina, Louisville are very good. And then Virginia's right there. I think that Virginia could legitimately finish number 2 in the conference, which would be absolutely unbelievable. I'll make sure I hit the chat real fast. Speaking of the ACC, LPD 23 says, do we think Cuse is creeping near the top 25? No, I don't think so. Yeah, I know they had a great win versus Tennessee, and after Players Era, like it's almost like when you're shooting cold, you just need to see one fall. It's not that you're a bad shooter, you just need to see one fall, and then you kind of get into rhythm a little bit. Syracuse 0-3 in Players Era. Houston overtime loss. Kansas by 11, and then Iowa State by 31. Now that Iowa State loss doesn't look as bad, obviously, by 31, but they went 0-3. They looked pretty good at Players Era. The shooting still isn't great. Come home, beat Tennessee, who was number 13, I think, in the country last week when they did beat them on Tuesday night. That's a huge win for them. It's great for morale also, and it's great for their tournament resume, right? Like they needed to have a marquee out of conference game to build the tournament resume for March. I still don't think that they deserve any votes at all because, like, look, they're 5-3. They got blown out by Iowa State. Their only win is against a Tennessee team who's fell to 20 now because Tennessee hasn't looked good either. So I don't think Syracuse deserves the votes yet, but I think some of the voters are probably keeping an eye on them, right? They have a few easy games coming up. As long as they take care of business, they should be what? What is that? 10-3 going into the new year, or sorry, New Year's Eve. Then they play against Clemson at home and ACC play. So we could talk about Syracuse in a few weeks if they take care of business versus some lower teams. Also in the ACC, Miami Hurricanes on the rise. Absolutely. I don't see any votes for Miami, which is okay. I wouldn't be super worried about that if you're a Miami fan because 8-2, they lost to Florida and BYU. They didn't look great in those games, but they looked decent. Beating Ole Miss and Georgetown is awesome for them, but those losses are looking worse and worse, right? Georgetown is 6-3 and just got their doors blown off by North Carolina. They also lost to Miami and obviously Dayton. And then Ole Miss looks absolutely terrible. They are 5-4, lost to Iowa, Utah, Miami, and St. John's. So the Ole Miss win and Georgetown win are important for them, but it doesn't like the wins hold less value than you want them to and than you originally thought that they might, obviously, which is not ideal. Let's get to some of the others receiving votes. I want to make sure we wrap that up before we get into the comments, some more comments. Iowa, after the loss to Michigan State, I'm fine with them dropping out because they're right there at 26. I personally, do I have them at 25 or 26? I think I have them at 25. So if I was voting on the poll, I have them at 25 exactly, yes. So I think that's fine. I think I would keep them there. I also think that Kentucky should not be getting a single vote. They're getting 29 votes, Kentucky. Like anyone voting for Kentucky is just voting for them because they're Kentucky. Like I don't understand any basis at all. They've looked absolutely awful. I know they're not fully healthy, but they have looked terrible. Seton Hall getting votes is so fun. Honestly, good for Shaheen. I might have to go to their game against Rutgers this week. They're going to be favored in that game. They're 57th in KenPom. They're 9-1. They lost to USC and Maui in the semis, but they really should have almost won that game with the refs kind of fleecing them. I'm not gonna lie. They beat Kansas State, they beat Wazoo, they beat NC State. It's really fun that Seton Hall is good, and I think that's incredible for them, and I think that's awesome, and it's great for Seton Hall as a school going forward, and it's great for the Big East because the Big East is in bad, and they need someone to kind of step up like this. I thought Clemson would get more votes. I know they lost to Alabama, but they looked very much the part in that game. Analytically, they ranked number 25 on KenPom. Like they lost to Georgetown, which is not great, but Georgetown did look decent earlier in the year. They've also beaten Georgia and West Virginia. So I thought Clemson would be a little higher, but everyone else here kind of makes sense. A Cal higher than I expected, but Oklahoma State undefeated. Georgia, we talked about their offense looks great. Wisconsin, Indiana, two Big Ten teams that also have looked decent. Indiana, obviously, on the decline. Let's see some of the other comments here. See what you guys are talking about. Henry says Zona is going to smack Bama this week. I don't think they're gonna smack them. Like I don't think Alabama can be smacked by anyone. They're one of the few teams because of how good they are offensively and how fast they like to play and how tough their shot makers are. I don't think they'll lose any games bad this year at all for Alabama. So they're gonna play they're gonna play Arizona this weekend. They also play USF after that. They're a team that just likes to run it up. So if a team's going to run it up on them, there's no way that they're going to be stopped to a point where their offense looks like miserable, right? Like they're probably the best offensive team in the country if you really think about it, especially player for player. So I don't think they'll get smacked, but if like gun to my head, I would take Arizona also. UNC should be closer to the top 10. Don't agree. We already talked about them a little bit. Glad to see Kentucky bias is gone and they have finally dropped after 4 losses. They dropped out. Yeah, Kentucky, man, like the panic meter is at a 10. I talked about it on my podcast for today's episode. Like a 10 out of 10 panic for Kentucky right now. They're 5-4 in the season. They lost to Louisville by 18. Oh, 18. Why did I say 8? 8-8. They lost to Michigan State by 17. They lost to Carolina by 3 this week, and then Gonzaga by 35. It just looks like they don't care. It legitimately looks like they don't care, and there's no effort. It looks like a team of guys who are all there to get their paycheck and who are all there waiting for the next guy to take over, right? Like Otego Away should be that guy. He was a preseason All-American and preseason SEC player of the year, if I'm not mistaken, at least first team All Conference. But he has been pretty lackluster for expectations. And like I said, every guy's waiting for the next guy to step up. Their defense hasn't been good. Offensively, they look dead in the water. They're not shooting the ball well at all. The freshmen are kind of having to be thrown in the water and try to do everything that they can to meddle with the storm or whatever a little bit. It's bad for Kentucky. They spent over $20 million on this roster. Their goal was to win a national championship this year, and they have a 0% chance to do that. I will confidently say there's no way that they're winning a national championship, obviously. They're not reaching their goals, and their goals were high, and they spent high. So I don't think Mark Pope's seat is going to be hot right now. But if they end the season on this kind of quality and like miss the NCAA tournament, because right now they're on like their season ends today, they're out of the NCAA tournament. There's no way in the world that they should be in the NCAA tournament. I know they're playing good teams, but their best win is analytically Valpo, who's 200th best team in the country. So Kentucky not looking good right now. Their next games are NC Central and Indiana this week. The Indiana game will be interesting because Indiana, I think, has more room to work with a little bit because they have a couple of out of conference wins that are better than what Kentucky has. The loser of that game is going to be in deeply bad conversations, especially for their NCAA tournament hopes. So that'll be interesting. And then Kentucky gets to play St. John's, Bellarmine, and then Alabama, Mizzou, and SEC play, obviously. So we'll see what happens with Kentucky, but I don't know. It's not looking great for them, obviously. Why hasn't UConn moved up in 3 weeks? That's because of the top 4 teams. It was Purdue, Arizona, Michigan, and Duke all undefeated. UConn 8-1 with that loss to Arizona. Iowa State now undefeated, mollywhopping Purdue at Mackey Arena. They have all the right case to be there in the top 4. UConn has a loss. I know it was at home to Arizona, not fully healthy without Braylon Mullins and Terrace Reed. I think Braylon did not play that game, but Terrace Reed did, or I think Braylon played, sorry, but Terrace didn't. But even not fully healthy, they have that loss. The top 4 teams in the country right now, Arizona, Michigan, Duke, Iowa State, are all undefeated. They've all dominated good teams, right? Like Iowa State dominated Purdue, Michigan dominated players there, Arizona dominated Auburn. they're undefeated and they all have great resumes. So there's no case for UConn to be ahead of those teams. And they were at 5. They didn't go down. So I think it's fine to have UConn stay at 5 as they play better teams and they keep winning because they're going to keep winning UConn. They will have their chance to move up. They get Florida this week at Jimmy V Classic tomorrow night. They get Texas, and then Butler and the rest of Big East play. So if they can beat Florida and Texas, then they're going to go roll into the new year likely undefeated. And who knows, they could roll into the March with 2 losses on the entire season, the way they're playing right now and the way the Big East is playing. So I wouldn't worry if I'm UConn 5. I think it's completely fair. Gonzaga jumping 8 spots, really him says, is pure insanity. That doesn't sound right. Gonzaga was 11 last week, and now they're up to 8. So that is not right. Illinois is going to run Nebraska. I assume you're saying out of the gym. Devin says, listen, I don't think Nebraska is awesome or amazing. I don't think that they're awful. I think this is what Nebraska does. They play a week out of conference schedule. They play bad power teams that they're better than, even though they're not an elite power team. They have a really good record. Then they go into Big Ten play, and they have some moments where it kind of like, I'm trying to say this nicely. I'll just say it plainly, where they're exposure moments, right? Like Illinois should expose Nebraska. I agree. Will they? I'm not sure because Nebraska, again, does this and they play off straight vibes and momentum and rhythm. And right now they're in rhythm and Rink Most is a monster. So we'll see what happens with Nebraska, Illinois. But I'm interested for sure. Michigan should be number 1 based on the past 4 games. Wolvie 421 says, again, the top 4 I think all have a case, and if you want to argue who it should be amongst them, I think you can argue with a wall. Obviously, the Players Era wins were awesome. They just beat Rutgers by a buck ton. They're going to play Villanova and Maryland this week, so they should be 10-0 at the end of the week and still in the conversation for number 1. If Arizona, say, loses to Alabama, Michigan will be number 1 in the country, obviously. Should Bama stay at 12? I thought Bama should have gone up a little bit. I think I would have put them above Louisville because they beat Clemson and then UTSA, not like amazing wins. The Clemson win is good, obviously. But I just think that Alabama is a slightly better team than Louisville. Again, we're nitpicking 11, 12. Like, it's not the end of the world there. As long as you're in the top 12 of the Week 6 AP poll, you can win the national championship. So there you go. Nonetheless, I think nothing to worry about Alabama. It's having a ranking off 1 or 2. They didn't do anything amazing this week to prove that they need to go up, right? So it's not really a problem for me. Michigan or Arizona on a neutral court? It's a great question. Right now in the season, I think I would go Michigan. And depending on how the freshmen develop, I think in March, I would probably still go Michigan, I think. But that's a really good question because they're both so big and so physical that I think it would be an absolutely unbelievable game. Really, all 4 of the top teams are big and physical, right? Like Iowa State's defense is physical. They're not like this massive team, but they have good size. Duke is big and physical. Michigan, obviously massive. Arizona is huge and athletic. So it's a great question. Really him says Florida will beat UConn. I don't know. I mean, they can. They need the guards to step up. It's going to be a UConn home game in MSG, Store South. So it'll be really interesting to see tomorrow night. I'm going to be in the building for that one, so I'll be watching very closely for that game. I think Florida still has potential to be one of the better teams in the country and be that top 10 team that we want them to be to go back to back. I don't think they're going to be a national champion at all or like that type of team in March, but they still have the ability, if they figure things out rotationally and usage-wise, to beat a team like UConn on Tuesday night and to prove that. So if they do, that would be amazing for them. If they don't, they might drop out of the top 25 because they're going to be down to 5-4, even though their losses have been to very, very good teams. And they have looked pretty decent in a lot of their losses, like the Duke game the other night. Steve Welsh says Coach of the Year is TJ Otzelberger. Yeah, right now, absolutely. I think like Tommy Lloyd and I guess Arizona and Iowa State had less expectations than Michigan and Duke. So I think Tommy Lloyd and TJ Otzelberger would be the 2 guys for sure right now. I think Izzo's up there, and Kevin Young with BYU. But again, BYU had expectations. Izzo and Michigan State look good, but not amazing. So I think that's probably accurate. My vote would be for TJ Otzelberger if the season ended today also. I'll get my last thoughts in here. You guys get your last questions and comments, and I will make sure I get to a few more before we hop out of here and watch some more basketball this week. Any comments that I missed? Here we go. D-Money says, at this point in the season, what conference is on top? Absolutely the Big 12. Look at the top 25 here, right? I'll read this off to you. Number 1, number 4, number 7, number 10 are all in the Big 12. Number 16 and 19 are also in the Big 12. Think about that top four and that top six. No other conference in the country has that good of an elite core at the top. The ACC's got Duke at 3, and their next best team is Louisville at 11, and then Carolina. The Big Ten is close at the top ish. They have Michigan at 2, Purdue at 6, Michigan State at 9, Illinois at 13. But after that, there's a little bit of a drop off, and the SEC doesn't have the top tier contenders that it normally does. There's not a single SEC team in the top 10. I just realized that. They have Alabama at 12, Vandy at 15, Arkansas at 17, Florida at 18, Tennessee, Auburn. Like the SEC is going to be a lot of fun. The SEC is kind of like what the Big Ten usually is, right? The Big Ten usually has a lot of really good teams, but no one top team. And the SEC usually has elite top tier contenders like we saw last year. So a little different this year. Big 12 definitely on top. No one else has the top tier quality that they do. Even if the SEC is deeper and better at the bottom of the conference, don't care. The Big 12 is the best conference in the country, which it normally is. So last couple comments. Purdue, the Donkey Bud says that Purdue should be at 9 and everyone moves up 1. St. John's should be gone. St. John's a tough one. There's no teams behind them that have like this blisteringly good case to be over them, even though I can understand it. But Purdue at 9, yeah, I don't fully agree with that. I don't have a problem with it, but I think one loss to Iowa State, who looks like the best team in the country right now, shouldn't drop you from 1 to 9, even if it was as bad as it was. I think them falling to 6, 7, 8, like again, 9, sure, I guess, but I would keep them over Michigan State, at least in my opinion. I think 8 is fair behind Houston and Gonzaga. Also, and we'll do one more here. Mountain Sentinel says, Yo Hammer, KU Final Four contender with Darren Peterson. Final Four contender for sure. They've been good without him. And I think the experience that they're getting amongst their guys without him is important for them to be comfortable being on the ball and being relied on more. And then now that Darren's back, great. Now we can be more balanced of a team and not just play through him all the time. And obviously he's an unbelievable player, so you can play through him when you need to and when he's on fire, like he was a little bit against Mizzou. He had 17 in like 23 minutes. So I think they're a Final Four dark horse team. They'll probably end up at like a 4 seed or a 5 seed or something like that. It'll be tough because they'll be getting really good mid-majors at large auto bid teams that are 12 and 13 seeds there. And then they have to play a 1 seed if they get to the Sweet 16. So it'll be a tough path, but Kansas looks decent. They've been good against good teams without Darren. So with Darren, theoretically, they should be good, obviously. Last one, I'll do one more. Takes on Texas Tech, Arkansas Saturday. I did talk about it before. A lot of tough shot makers on both sides of the ball. Both their coaches offensively like to just let the guys play. So I think it's going to be a really, like one of the better games of the non-con slate, in my opinion. It's going to be very fun to watch. Who steps up defensively in the backcourt, I think, is the big thing. And can the size of Arkansas, Trevor Brazile, Malik Ewan, shut down JT Toppin at all or limit him at least? That'll tell the story about that one also. But very excited to see Arkansas and Texas Tech play in Dallas on Saturday. Appreciate y'all for being here as always. That's going to do it for this week's stream. Make sure to tap in next week on Monday, per usual, every single Monday. We're doing these at 1 p.m. Eastern Time when the AP poll drops for full reactions and takeaways and expectations for the week coming up. Hope you guys enjoy the college basketball this week. Almost that time for holiday season, and then we're going to be right into conference play. So appreciate y'all for being here. See you later.